All right, guys. Well, it's 3 o'clock. Honestly, I'm super excited to be wrapping up the year with a live video answering your guys' car photography questions while I unbox a new lens. I bought a new lens kind of for myself for Christmas because I just got into the Lumix camera system and I needed this new lens to kind of help out with my work, which is mostly YouTube, but also automotive photography. So I wanted to offer you guys the opportunity to input some questions and come hang out with me at the end of the year. I figured what better way than to answer your guys' questions. And you guys submitted both on YouTube, on Instagram. There's a lot of activity there. And while you guys are here in the live chat, feel free to drop some questions in there, and I will do my best to get to as many of them as I possibly can. Some things overlap, so I might just answer questions that kind of generally answer a question for a broad group of you. But otherwise, hopefully you guys get something out of this if you're a car photographer or you've just been a viewer of the channel for a while. Yeah, just excited to hang out with you guys genuinely. I think we'll do this for about an hour or so, maybe less. That's a long time, so we'll see. Maybe my camera will shut off. I don't know. But yeah, super excited to be here with you guys. So I'm going to dive in with a few questions, and then we'll open this box. It's genuinely unopened, so you guys can see we'll all be surprised together. It'll be a fun time. Yeah, hey Nick, hey NC, hey Jonathan Torres, hi Casey Sue. I know you submitted a question, so we'll get to that one. Cool, just the space I'm in. Right on. So some of the first questions, obviously, you guys are super curious about lenses. So I'll dive into that one right away. Like my personal favorite lens for automotive photography is a 35 millimeter. I did have a lot of people asking what's the best 35 millimeter or what are the best focal lengths for car photography. If you're asking me, I love the 35. Now the reason for that is that it's kind of a nice in-between in that you get both a wide view, you get enough of the scenery while you can still be close enough to the car to kind of be focused mostly on the vehicle. I'd say if I had to go a little further, I'd go to the 50 millimeter because that's a pretty nice kind of like portrait lens, and essentially we are portrait photographers, but we're just using a car as our subject. 85 is nice. It adds a really beautiful amount of compression, but for me, I don't love it because you actually end up having to stand quite a far ways away from the car. And then when you start to shoot kind of vertical, which most of us have to for Instagram if that's what we're posting, you lose a lot of kind of space to see kind of what's around it. So that's my personal view. And then if you go much wider than 35, you're kind of looking at starting to distort maybe the car. So take that with a grain of salt if you guys like longer focal lengths. I know North Borders, if you guys watch him as well, he loves like the 100 mil and farther. So everyone just kind of likes a different spice. I guess mine's the 35. I just really enjoy that lens. If you're getting a budget one, honestly, the one that I have is a 35 millimeter f1.8. So it's not the Sigma 1.4. If you got the budget for it, go for it. Get the, I guess, the lowest number f-stop that you possibly can. Oh no, the memory card just stopped recording on the camera, which is totally fine. I think we're still live. Hopefully you guys can hear me here. No. Sorry guys, technical issues. Hopefully y'all can still hear me and we're still going live. Technology, man. Okay. Yeah, just get whatever's in your budget. It doesn't have to be the lowest aperture. I find the f1.8 works great. You get enough low light capabilities. You don't have to crank your ISO. So that's great. I think just whatever you can afford in the 35 mil range, you're gonna be laughing. All right, so diving into some questions here. One guy asked, what is the best way to find cool or interesting locations to do automotive photography and videography? He says, my area is mostly boring parking lots, so any advice is welcome. The way that I think about locations is kind of whenever I'm driving anywhere, and I have made a video of this on my YouTube, is how to find great locations. You can use Google Maps, you can use Apple Maps, and you can kind of use Street View as well. One thing I found super interesting when I went down to Texas and when I was driving back up to Canada, there's a lot of small towns, and a lot of you guys are saying that small towns are awful, but essentially as a photographer, we're really just looking for one angle. The whole space doesn't have to be beautiful. We're just looking for one wall, one angle, and if you know which focal length you're using, you just need to find a beautiful wall or something that has greenery or a singular color, or maybe even like an old wall or a brick wall, or I don't know, you just kind of think about just that one frame. The whole architecture of the space doesn't have to be gorgeous. And when I was driving back, I saw so many of those walls that I wanted to pull over and take photos of my BRZ with. I didn't because it's a long drive. But I think just get creative. Think simply what does not distract from the car, or what background might add color contrast to the car. My car's blue, so something that will make that blue pop. Stuff like that. It is difficult, I guess, if you're in smaller cities, but just look for interesting walls. Maybe. I hope that helps. If not, find a vast space and just make sure, just remember that your car is the subject, and we're not trying to take away from the car. We're trying to put that car in a space that makes that car look beautiful. Hopefully that helps. How do you avoid light glares and headlights when filming and photographing? Is it the angle? Is it the lens? Is it the filters? I would say it's mostly the angle. A lot of the times when I'm filming a vehicle, you get to a certain level on that car, and that's when the lens flare happens and it really hits hard. I would say just avoid that as much as you can. I do recommend, if you're filming or photographing any vehicles, to use a CPL filter. That'll cut out reflections on the car, or an ND filter obviously is going to get you optimal lighting. When you are exposing for your vehicles, make sure to just expose always for your highlights, unless you're kind of having to balance that headlight in the car. But just, yeah, try and keep your highlights fully exposed when you're shooting video. Have we got any questions here in the YouTube chats? Feel free to dump them in there, guys, and I'll do my best to get to them as I can. Danny is from Lebanon. That's crazy. Living in Dubai, facing a problem here because he can't shoot without permission in Dubai City. Is this normal in Canada too? I think it's pretty normal. I don't think like security guards like car photographers very much. If you are in a place that has any form of regulations, even certain parking lots here in Calgary, we get kicked out really quick. If you park your car a certain way, you don't pay for parking, and you start shooting, security guards will come and tell me to move quite often. So I think it's a pretty standard issue problem. For the most part, you just got to find your spot, get your car in, shoot it as quick as you can, and move on. But yeah, I hope that you can find some spots that you can shoot. Audio is a bit echoey. Sorry about that, guys. Doing my best here. I've lost my mouse. Jeez Louise, tech. Anders asks, what do you do with blown out highlights, I'm assuming, in video? If you've blown out your highlights in videos, unfortunately that information is crushed. The data on that sensor can no longer be retained, therefore it's gone. Do your best to kind of retain as much data as you can. So that's why I say, if you are filming, make sure to protect your highlights. Cameras are developed with, the Lumix, for example, has 14 stops of light dynamic range underneath that highlight that we get to work with. So if you protect your highlights, you can have a lot of data to work with. And for the most part, in my 10 years of filming, save your highlights, and you can almost always bring back the details in the shadows. So that's what I would say. Protect your highlights. It looks much more cinematic. If you ever watch any movie, you will not see blown out highlights unless you're shooting interior, shooting exterior. So there you go. I don't know how to turn off the two mics, guys. I'm sorry. I'm such a noob at the OBS, but I appreciate you guys helping me out, and hopefully I'll get this thing sorted out for next time. I would like to do more live because I think it's fun and it keeps you guys involved. And yeah, so maybe if you guys are enjoying this, give it a like or something, or let me know in the chats, and maybe I'll do some more of this stuff in the new year. I think it's a fun way to build community. So. Okay, so we have a question here, is how to find more clients. That's a great question, and I would honestly say that this is probably one of the areas in which I am not the greatest. I'm a pretty introverted guy when it comes to like reaching out to companies, and I haven't really sorted out the best way to reach out to a brand. Even if I have a great idea and I think we're at 60,000 subscribers, even with that, I'm genuinely terrible at saying, hey, I'm talented, I have something I can offer you. I haven't figured out quite the verbiage yet to reach out to those clients. I did go hang out with a guy named Eric McRitchie, and I've made a video with him on how to work with big brands, and so I highly recommend going and checking that out. He works with brands like Columbia, Lexus Canada, huge like liquor companies and stuff, and he's absolutely an incredibly talented photographer as well. So seek that one out. If you're watching this later, I'll try and put a tag up here or something for you guys or in the description. But I'd say, I guess I'll speak from my experience how I did get a job with Porsche Canada. What I did with Porsche Canada is, first and foremost, I tried to approach the local Porsche dealership, got in with them as best as I could, offered to do free photos for them. I did have enough of a portfolio that when I offered to do photos for them, this is very important, when I offered to do photos for them, they could see that I was a valid photographer, that the product that I would give them is of value to them. So I think that's really important. Start with a great portfolio. Then what I did, and this is what I would recommend doing kind of with any company you want to approach, is I looked up all of their social medias. So Facebook, Instagram, I don't know, whatever their other social medias are, YouTube, just kind of figuring out where they're lacking in content and then find a way to bridge the gap in that content. So for Porsche Canada specifically, they had an app called Roads by Porsche, and they didn't have any good content for it. So I approached the local dealership saying, hey, I've noticed that there's a gap in this. Can I take a vehicle and make a Roads by Porsche video for you guys? Of course, they let me take a video of I think it was a Cayenne we shot for that one. There's also a behind the scenes video on my YouTube. We almost hit a cow. It was insane. And then from that, Porsche Canada then actually did give me a budget. It wasn't a huge one, to create a Roads by Porsche video. So that video is called like Why I Became a Car Photographer, and it's a bit of a behind the scenes, but one of the videos I'm most proud of making, so you can check that one out. But yeah, find a gap in any brand and offer services that are of value to them. I think, and this will kind of lead me into car photographers approaching, let's say, car dealerships as well. The same approach you should be taking here is find a gap in their content creation strategy and then offer a way to fill that gap. It's really important, again, when you approach other brands, it is not like, hey, I'm a car photographer and I need content. It's not about us. It's about the brand, and it's about that company adding value to that company. So make sure to keep that in mind when you approach other companies and other brands, that you need to add value to them in order for them to say yes. So I think what's cool is we then get to use that content and then turn it into content for us in our social media, etc. So I think that's how I found success through YouTube. Was I approached a local dealership here. It was a Toyota dealership, and they started lending me their vehicles because I was managing their social media for them. They don't have anyone doing that. So I took that over and then used that as an opportunity to share my process and journey with you guys. So that's been a lot of fun, and it's been really successful, and I'm really enjoying doing this with you guys. So hopefully some of that stuff gives you guys some helpful tips. I'm going to try and find another question here. Okay, I found this to be a good question. It was from Urban Detailer, and he says basic stuff, but his Canon M50 video recordings are grainy. Since he switched to AV mode, which is Aperture Priority on your camera, it still doesn't look buttery smooth like most YouTubes. Seems to get better footage from my smartphone. So this to me is an issue about understanding how to use your camera. Now, I'm going to make a video about this because I'm super passionate about it, and you guys ask me all the time when you see a photo, you're like, what settings did you use? And that to me, great question, but it's kind of irrelevant. Essentially, this means you don't fully understand how to use your camera, and that is okay. That's what this channel is all about. That's why you're here. That's why I'm super excited to be teaching you guys everything that I know. So he's using Aperture Priority, which means that he's going to set his aperture to whatever his lens will let him. Let's just say it's a 2.8, for example. From there, your camera gets to decide what shutter speed to use and what ISO to use to get correct exposure. Now, cameras aren't that smart. They don't know what you want them to do. So essentially, it could be setting a shutter speed at 100 or 150 or farther, depending on what you have your frame rate set to, and therefore your camera might be overcompensating with ISO because it needs to add light. So the more you understand your camera, highly recommend turn your dial to the little M there, that means manual mode, and if you're ever shooting video, specifically in 24 frames per second, you're going to set your shutter speed to 1/50. That is double our frame rate. Then I highly recommend setting your ISO to 100, and then your aperture, if you don't have an ND filter, set your aperture until you get proper exposure on yourself. So that shutter speed of 1/50, that's the buttery smooth that you're looking for here. The ISO should take away the grain, and then the aperture is going to allow you to get correct exposure. So if you have a lower aperture of a 2.8 and you want that like kind of buttery background, I don't know if we're getting that buttery of a background on here, but if you want that, then use an ND filter to set your aperture to somewhere like 2.8, 4.0, something like that, and you'll get buttery smooth footage, blurry background, and no grain. So I'm going to be making a video on how to truly understand your camera, because I think there's a lot of you guys out there, when you ask what are your settings, essentially I'm setting my aperture to where I want, I'm setting my ISO to 100, and then I use shutter speed in photography to get correct exposure. So that's just a little thing, but keep your eyes out for that video. If you aren't subscribed already, feel free to hit that subscribe button. All right, Casey Sue is who asks 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second. The answer is yes. Both are great. I tend to personally use 60 frames per second. A lot of cameras give us access to slow motion, but not a lot of them have 120 frames per second with like great bit depths. So the Canon R6, when I was using it, did give me 4K 60 frames per second. The Lumix gives me 1080p 60 frames per second, but it has a bit depth of 422 10-bit color, so it's still like nice and punchy, and I can get a lot of the data back from it. So hopefully that answers your question. I use 24 frames per second if the car is moving in motion, 60 frames per second for detail shots and those kinds of things. I don't often use 120 frames per second anymore. Okay. So we're a little bit in here. I'm gonna actually start opening up this this box, and we can see what's inside. What lens I decided to go with. I haven't opened it, so let's just kind of dive in and see what's inside here. Meanwhile, let's see if I can answer some of your questions in here. 1080p is already good in 2023 for video. What do you think? Yep, you can shoot in 1080p. Most people won't notice. Let's see, 1016 media. With my Harley photography, I tag the brands and shots I've done, and I send that to the brand and tell them I want to do something with them, offer to do it for free or cheap, and they usually bite. So yeah, that's a great way to do it. If you're shooting a Toyota or a Harley Davidson, tag them, reach out to them, offer to let them use it, get on their radar. That's not a bad way to do it. That did work for me with Mercedes USA. I shot some Mercedes shots and they liked it. They posted it on their social media and it actually performed extremely well. I've never gotten paid by them. They've never reached out to me. Most of that stuff is just kind of a gift to get on their radar or into their DMs, so that if you have a great idea, you can then pitch it to them. So that's a great idea, 1016 Media. Thanks for throwing that out there. Cartel Bo, auto glass technician, and found and subscribed me a few days ago. Thanks, man. Let's take your photos to the next level. That's what we're here for. That's literally why I'm here. I want to make your photos better, so I'm glad you're here. Check out like the most popular playlist, and then you can kind of see which videos have performed well. But there's a lot of good stuff, even in like the deep cuts. Just because it's got, only 2,000 or 4,000 views, it's probably because it did a crappy thumbnail or title. But the content really is good, and I hope that you guys do learn something from it. I made this channel for you guys, so I hope that you enjoy it. Okay. Paper, bottles, and another box. Wonderful. Don't need that. Best handheld settings for car videos, R6, 16 to 35, 2.8. Sorry, forgot the question mark. Okay, that's a great question because the R6 has 2 levels of image stabilization in it. If you are shooting handheld at 16 mil, if you're shooting a car, maybe I wouldn't do 16 mil, but if you do 16 mil and turn on like the full image stabilization on your Canon R6, you're gonna be sitting somewhere closer to like a 24, I think, between 20 and 24 millimeter. Best handheld settings, if you're holding a camera, I almost always have my elbows tucked in because that's 2 extra bits of stabilization, and then I just kind of like, I don't know, sway. So that's kind of how I do it. If you have a camera strap, you can also put it around your neck and push it off of your neck. That's an added point of stabilization. So unless you want really shaky footage, which most of the time you don't, because you can always add shake in post. You want to do like decently clean. That's my recommendation. But otherwise, just set your shutter speed correctly. Yeah, Daniel's got it. You've already got it. Bought the camera too with the kit lens. What do you improve? Oh, guys, you can see the lens in here. Teasing. Woo! Fun. Okay, we're going to dive into that soon. Caleb Honcho asks, how did I start out doing automotive content creation? Great question, man. So this is like this goes into a bit of my history. So 10 years ago, I actually started photography and videography for a private school here in Calgary. I knew nothing, 0% about photography, videography. I was a musician, actually. So they're like, hey, you're creative. Do you want to learn how to shoot photos and videos? And I said, sure. So throughout that process, I was very, very fortunate to learn on cinema cameras. So like Canon C200s, C100s. And in fact, I started on the Canon 5D Mark II, I believe it was. So that was like the first camera that you could actually do proper cinema on. And through, this is kind of like when cinema and like DSLR started blowing up and like the 4K was coming out and the 4K 60 was coming out. So like, this is when I was like really in the video world, learning how to light stuff. A lot of what we did was interview footage and like cinematic kind of storytelling and like short documentaries. So I took all that knowledge of how to use a camera, and then 5 years into it, I got the opportunity to shoot a car. And I fell in love with shooting automotive. A good friend of mine actually offered to let me shoot his McLaren. And that's when the game changed, because when you sit in a McLaren and you photograph a McLaren, it's intoxicating. It's literally intoxicating. His name's Max. He actually wants me to take his now Porsche 911 out. I also just filmed a video with his new white Porsche 911. You guys can go check that out. That's how to shoot with a gimbal. So you can check that video out. But yeah, that's when the passion really started. So then I started taking everything that I knew from photo and video and tailoring it into automotive photography. And a lot of it is really just if you understand your camera, if you understand how to use a CPL filter, essentially for automotive photography, and then just changing all that stuff over. And now I'm just trying to learn how to tell better stories and teach you guys how to do these things in a way that's entertaining and keeps you engaged. That's the YouTube way. So, all right. Do we get into it? Maybe we'll answer a couple more questions. Kit lens to improve. I bought the Canon M50 Mark II and the kit lens. What do you recommend to improve? Quick answer is get a better lens. M50 is worse than your iPhone in most cases. Yeah, getting a new lens helps, but honestly, understanding how to use your camera is the most important thing. Learning how to tell good stories if you're doing video is the most important thing, because like he said here, you can use your iPhone to tell great stories too and keep people engaged. I think in honestly most circumstances, your iPhone can do what all of these cameras can do, unless you're trying to get into a professional market and do things professionally. Then heck yeah, get a new lens. But I would say understand your camera first. Learn how to shoot in manual. Shoot your car, shoot your mom's car, shoot your sister's boyfriend's car and just like learn your camera inside and out. What autofocus do you like using? How well does it work? Does it track subjects well? Get to know your camera, and then when, say, with that kit lens, figure out what focal length you most enjoy using. I know I like 35. I tend to sit in that range a lot, so that's when I went and bought a 35mm prime because I knew I liked that focal length. So it's not bad to use a kit lens to understand what you like. Keep your ISO low as possible because M50, I believe, is a crop sensor, so you want to keep your ISO as low as you can, as much as you can. Hopefully that helps, man. Will I ever hire an editor? Alex Leva says, I would love to, because I'd love to make more content, but editing is a stopgap, I guess. But I don't have enough money to do that yet. We've still got to blow this channel up, so feel free to share all my content and subscribe and like and all that stuff, because that way the sooner we get up to, you know, like 100K and we actually get more sponsored videos and stuff, that's when I can maybe start looking to hiring out an editor and those kinds of things. We're not quite there yet. At this point, I'm shooting, editing, everything, and we don't have that many great sponsorships yet. I mean, the MUSICBED's great, Peloti's amazing, but we're not quite in a consistent financial bracket. And I quit my previous job. So, yeah, finances they're all over the place. So if you guys see me with a sponsored video, just do me a favor, like click the link or something. You don't have to buy it, but just know that I'm doing it because it's like literally how I pay my bills. It's not like something that I'm doing. I also will never put a product on you guys that I don't actually truly believe in or think that you guys can use or will benefit you in your career moving forward. So that's just a little caveat moving forward. Thanks, Alex. I'll keep you in mind. That's really nice. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so I got this new lens because I got the new Lumix, and I'm currently on the kit lens. We're filming on the kit lens right now, but I wanted to get a little bit of a better aperture on it for my vlogging, for YouTube, and a wider lens because I actually do a lot of real estate filming as well. So this lens will help me a lot with that real estate and with my YouTube vlogging. And so that lens is a Sigma, because Sigma supports L-mount, which is freaking fantastic. Lumix is the way to go, and there are rumors that they are actually releasing an S5 Mark II and that they are changing the autofocus system, so I'm super hyped on that to see what that is, and I will definitely be keeping my eye out for that. All right, answering a few questions from Instagram. How many CPLs is too many CPLs on a lens? I've never actually stacked CPL filters. I've stacked photos after rotating. That's a good idea. Maybe stack some CPLs and see how it works. Best 3 prime lenses for photo and video. For me, it would be a nice wide lens, so you can film yourself, or interiors like an 18 or a 20 mil, then the 35 mil and an 85 mil. I personally don't really shoot past that, but for me, 35 does most of what a 50 mil can do. You just got to get a little closer. What is the best time of day for shooting? Says Must Fins. For me, it's sunset or sunrise, and it's not just because that's what everyone says to do. It's because if you look at cinema, if you look at this light right here, it's trying to side light me, and that is trying to emulate the sunrise or the sunset because it adds contrast. It gives shape and contour to something. So when you're shooting a vehicle or people or whoever you're photographing, we're trying to add shape and contrast and light to accentuate curves and bring out the details in something. So that's why I recommend shooting not at noon, but just when the light is off to the side, giving you shape and contrast. Someone's asking about white balance settings. Sometimes I do auto, sometimes I set it Kelvin-wise for what I'm shooting outside. Currently we're at 5200. Excuse me. Best way to edit photos on an iPhone, Lightroom Mobile, baby. And if you have the money, get the paid for version. I don't think it's that expensive, but that way you actually get the masking features. And then for the most part, you can actually do everything on that phone that you can do in Lightroom on a computer. Almost. Not quite, but almost. All right, what's happening here in the YouTubes? What did I shoot before I moved systems? I have shot, I started on the Canon 5D Mark II, then moved to the Canon 5D Mark III. This is, of course, like 10 years ago. Then we actually got the Sony a6500 because it was the first like 4K 60. It was a pretty crazy camera back then. And so then we started moving up in the Sony ranks. So we got the a7 III, which was a pretty great camera. Did a ton of professional work with that camera. So if you have that one, you're doing great. Then we moved back from the Sony to the Canon system to the Canon R5, Canon R6. Then I quit my job, so I didn't have access to those cameras anymore, and I had to buy my own. I bought the Canon R6, which was a fantastic kind of all-around camera, great for video, great for YouTube, great photography, pretty decent in low light. So highly recommend the R6 as well. And now the R6 Mark II is out, which is fantastic. So if you're in the Canon ecosystem, I can highly recommend those cameras. I've used them a ton. And the Lumix, to me, had the best dynamic range, the best look. The way that Lumix handles highlights is like no other camera I've ever used. It is so soft, so beautiful, really easy to color grade. The photography is much more similar to the a7 III than it was to the Canons because it handles low lights impeccably, like not a ton of noise, and handles highlights better than any camera that I've ever used. So that's why I went with the Lumix S5. I think that it is the best of all the worlds, aside from autofocus, which you guys might be experiencing right now. But for the most part, I'm able to lock off the focus and shoot in manual. If I ever shoot professional gigs, I'm always shooting manual mode anyways, so that's just food for thought. But for YouTube stuff, you might get a little bit of hunting, that's just life. Even when I have the Sony cameras and the Canon cameras, none of them are perfect. None of them stuck perfectly, so that's just how it is. Great question. I'm gonna just hop in here to Instagram questions again. Should I buy a desktop computer like the iMac or a MacBook for editing Photoshop and videos? I went the route and I got a MacBook Pro, 16-inch M1 Pro. Anything with an M1 chip, this is Nemesis Media, anything with an M1 chip or farther will edit your footage like incredibly well, or your photos. So I highly recommend Mac. I've only ever been on them, so that's what I recommend. So much paper here, it's ridiculous. Ooh. Does anybody use like lens filters or hoods? I don't use them. I never use them. I kind of like lens flares. Am I weird? I like them, so I don't use them. So this is not a prime lens. This is a zoom lens. This is a Sigma 16 to 28 millimeter lens. It is the contemporary version from Sigma for the L mount, and I'm very curious to see how well it works with the Lumix autofocus. So I will be doing some testing with this because I'm actually going to make a video for you guys on what I believe to be like the next thing that we should all do. If you want to grow your social media channel, this is how I've done it. I'm going to talk to you guys kind of about like what the current social atmosphere is and what I've done to grow successfully, and kind of just share that with you guys as we go into 2023. So I'm going to go test this lens out, and we're going to talk about those things as we go into the new year. But yeah, this is the 16 millimeter to 28 Sigma f2.8. It has a 72 millimeter thread, which means I'll have to use an adapter ring to use most of my filters, but that's okay. Yeah, looks fine. 2.8 is going to be great. It'll give me a little bit of a blurrier background for scenarios like this, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll help a ton with talking head videos, with walking around town videos, with real estate, getting a little bit more light in there. So super stoked to have this. So stay tuned, subscribe if you guys want to see how well this lens works on the Lumix, the L mount system, and we'll go from there. Is there a major difference between contemporary and art lenses? I don't think there's a huge difference between. I've used a bunch of the art lenses, specifically the 35 millimeter art, the 16, or I think it was the 18 to 35 millimeter art, 50 to 100. You're essentially getting bigger glass, which is heavier, maybe better looking image, but I can't personally tell the difference. I mean, for example, even I shot a video recently comparing my iPhone to a proper camera, and you can't really tell the difference. So to me, it's more just using the tools that work for you to get you the image that you desire. For me, it's never really been about getting the best equipment. All of the work that I've done throughout my entire career has been like, how can I get the best image for the least amount of money? So I've always tried to be as efficient as I can, which has helped me a ton as getting into YouTube, because I don't need to get the R5 with the $3,000 lens. Like, it's just insane. I got the S5 with a $800 lens or something like that, and it's freaking fantastic. So you don't always need the best gear. You don't need the biggest stuff. Obviously, if it's affordable, if it's in your price range, if you know how to use it, you're going to get really high quality content. And I honestly think when it comes to car photography and videography, a lot of the work is done in post. So as long as you get a really good clean image, you know you keep your ISO low, you use a decent aperture, and then correctly set your shutter speed for the situation, you're going to get high quality content. And then it's a lot about the post-production work. I would say 80% of it is how to get a professional looking image. So go check out some of my editing tutorials if that will help you out. Headed back to some of the Instagram questions here. Favorite car to shoot that I've done so far? I love anything Porsche, but I think the coolest car that I've ever shot was the Pagani Huayra, the Tricolore. The reason I say that is obviously the car is insanely expensive, but it had such a presence to it, and I was absolutely terrified to shoot the car. Like, shooting with a gimbal, I was more careful than I've ever been around that car to not ding it, touch it, scratch it. Like, it was the most intense vehicle I've ever shot. It was in a room, but it just was special. I think it just had a presence to it. So that was cool. But otherwise, Porsche to me, it's pretty wicked. And back in the day, I did shoot a cool video with, I think it was like 3 or 4 Lamborghinis and a McLaren. So that was an older video. That was a pretty hype day. You can go check that one out. That was a lot of fun. Can a car photographer get paid as good as a wedding or portrait photographer, and how would you start? To be honest, I don't think so. I haven't yet. I do car photography because I'm wildly passionate about it, and YouTube has been how I've gotten probably most of my finances. If you want to grind, you could probably make quite a bit of money as a car photographer, but I think you're going to have to work pretty hard until you get to the level where you are getting paid by the big corporations. I do know that big corporations are paying like up to $50,000 for creators to make short videos, which is absolutely insane. So if you can get in with the right people, you know how to do that, awesome. I haven't made $50,000 shooting a video yet, even though I know I got the chops for it. I've got plenty of videos out there that say I can do it. I haven't made $50K on a video, but you can. So maybe if you know the right people, you've gotten really good at your craft and good enough that the big brands and companies can't ignore you, then yeah, you can absolutely make it. But it's going to take a long time. Maybe. I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't for you, but for me, it's taking a long time. I hope we get there. Someone is asking if I'm having a sale for my presets and toolkits. Heck yeah, man. They're always on sale. I honestly think the price that they're set at is fair because they're freaking cool. I use my presets all the time, not because of like the look, but because of how diverse they are. If you haven't checked them out yet, they're stackable, which means that one section is going to handle your light in Lightroom. The other section is going to handle a curves tool, and then you can kind of swap them out. And the colors aren't that crazy. If you want a crazy color, you can add it, but you can also just add simple colors to your photos as well. Check them out. I think until January 1st, we're using Happy Holidays 25 to get an additional 25% off. So if you're seeing this right now, now's the time to get it for an additional 25% off. But I think the price is fair. It's a pretty cool tool. So hopefully you enjoy them. I think there's like a video on my website showing how I use them. So hopefully enjoy those, but I definitely do. Histogram tips says drive auto gallery. If you've got your histogram up and you see anything peeking on the right side of it, that means that you're blowing out your highlights. So do not blow out your highlights. Make sure to keep all the data retained in your histograms. So if you're peeking on the far right side of your frame and you see a big white line, then adjust your exposure darker until you have all those white highlights exposed. Alex Leva on Instagram asked, how do you get over imposter syndrome? Which I actually find to be a super interesting question. I wouldn't say, oh, he's in here too. Sweet. Good to see Alex. I would say that I struggle with this massively, actually. Imposter syndrome. How to brand myself well, how to say I'm good enough at something is so difficult. I think even having 60,000 subscribers feels surreal. I think we're fortunate enough to follow the people like the Peter McKinnons and the Matty Haboyas, and they've got the hundreds of thousands, so I don't personally see 60K as like that great, but then if you think about 60,000 people in a room or potentially want to hear what I have to say, I find that fairly humbling, so I try and stay humble, I think, in my approach, because I am genuinely just like you guys. Like, I am no better than you. I think for some reason, I genuinely want people to follow their passions. I think, like, if you can experience joy doing something in life, I want you to do that. And I found something that worked for me, and that's automotive photography. And I found a couple of brands that are willing to work with me, and that's fantastic. And I think for me, I just want as many people to experience that level of joy that I have. And so I don't know if it's imposter syndrome. I don't know, but I think just like humbly, I want to help people get to where I have, or people that are just like one step behind me. My goal is to just kind of help pull them up, or even get better than me. People message me on Instagram all the time saying like, "Hey, thank you so much. I now work for this dealership, or working for Jaguar, or working for these other companies," and they're already farther along the road than I am, which I just find to be incredible, and I'm just so happy for them. Like, no part of me is jealous or upset. I think like that's exactly what we're here to do, is to make you guys better. But imposter syndrome's hard. Yeah, it's hard to kind of, unless you've got that personality to be like, I'm awesome, good for you. I like, those people are wicked and they can drive hard and they can go fast. I'm not that kind of person. I approach things pretty humbly and softly, maybe to my detriment. But yeah, sorry if that doesn't answer your question at all. But just have confidence and know what you can do. I would say just build a great portfolio. As long as you're passionate about your work, that should be good enough. This isn't answering your question at all, but I'm doing my best. Stealth Taco just asked about dealerships. We did talk about this earlier in the stream, so when we're done this, just come circle right back and we talk a little bit about how to approach dealerships or brands at all, and how to get them to recognize you. Yeah, we're at 3:43. If you could shoot with only one zoom lens, what would it be? 24-70 gives you wide enough of a lens. 35 mil, which I love, the 50 mil, which I love, and 70 mil, which gives you a bit of a compressed look. So if you had to get one lens, that's what I would do at a 2.8, because that's enough light as well. So that's a pretty easy one. Ultimately, guys, yeah, I think I'm going to wrap up here because we've been live for about 45 minutes. But genuinely, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this YouTube channel. I've very much enjoyed doing it for you guys. This last year, 2022, absolutely one of the most difficult years of my life, but also came with a lot of big joys and big wins. So yeah, thanks for sticking with me. If you guys want to stick around, hit that subscribe button, because I think this is what I'm doing. This is what we're going to keep doing, just keep helping you. I'm hoping to be authentic with you. I'm hoping to bring you guys along. The motto that I've figured out for this channel is that I want to inspire, I want to educate, and I want to entertain. So if I'm going to be doing any of those things, I'm going to post a video, hopefully inspiring you guys to pursue what you are passionate about, and create content that you're proud of. I want to educate you guys on how I have gotten good at my craft. I want to educate you on how I've gotten work with brands. I want to educate you on how to take better photos and videos and how to edit them. And hopefully, in the meantime, you guys will be entertained is the hope. So yeah, I do love you guys. I love doing this YouTube thing. So I'm really excited that I get to do this full time. I'm trying to figure out a rhythm. It's crazy working for yourself. And this is my home. Over there is like my kitchen. So I'm trying to figure out how to like work and create. And I don't have editors and I don't have people picking topics or doing thumbnails and titles for me. So I'm trying to figure this all out on the go. So I love you guys. I appreciate you guys kind of walking through this with me. If you do want to support the channel, the best way to do that is with Lightroom presets. It is subscribing. It is watching the videos. Yeah, if you guys want to support, join the channel as well, because any of that money that goes into that like join pool, I'm hoping to do more live streams, and maybe we'll just funnel the live streams into that join channel so that those people can ask questions specifically. But all that YouTube money goes into YouTube. It goes back into getting cool cars. It goes back into getting cool cameras and lenses to educate you guys. So I'm definitely going to be putting the money back into the channel to better educate you guys and to entertain you guys better. So I hope that you guys want to continue to stick around and support the channel. Yeah, otherwise, I hope that you guys have a fantastic end of the year into the new year. I hope you had a Merry Christmas, and I'm really looking forward to 2023 and spending more time with you guys. So thanks so much for watching. Thanks for putting all your questions in here. I hope that you guys learned something from it. Make sure to, subscribe, because a lot of these questions get answered in all of the videos that I post and will continue to post moving forward. If I didn't get to your question, I'm sorry. Again, subscribe. I'm going to be trying to take these questions and turn them into shorts so that I can answer your questions quickly and condensedly. So yeah, love you guys. I hope that you have a great year in 2023, and I'll see you later. Yeah, okay. Bye, guys. Peace.